fire.
A few months ago, I was discussing with Jason Strickler in our group different ways to repair a smoke unit for a smoking boiler type of steamer. And he and I got discussing about using the Lionel Smoke Element resistors. And I thought it might be a different way to try and do this repair instead of taking the fiberglass wick and wrapping the nichrome wire around it. So what I'm going to try to do here today is basically an experiment to see how well this all works. So what we'll do is we'll take the resistor element and wind this around and then place it inside the smoke box as we normally would. As you can see, it fits well inside the smoke box, doesn't touch anything on the outside. So this may be a little easier to do instead of trying to wrap the nichrome wire around the wick. So let's give this a try and see what happens. Okay, here we're wrapping the wick around the resistor, making sure it covers all of the resistor element. And then at this point now we're going to do like we normally would do to feed the wick in through the holes on the smoke box. So bear with me here while I get my tools together. I use a wick threading tool here that I got from Doug Peck at Port Lines. Makes things a little bit easier to accomplish here. What I've done also to make it a little easier to keep everything all together is I've used an alligator clip just to hold the wicking material in place while I position everything over the threading tool. And then we'll just put the wick there through the threading tool and pull it on through, and there it's on the other side. And we'll do the same thing for the other leg of the wick. And we'll pull this side through also. See if we have a little problem with this side here. There we go. And now we've got the wick pulled through like we normally would. And I'm just going to take this alligator clip off of here and then pull the wick all the way through, and then we'll position the top plate on top of the smoke unit. And as you can see, there's the wicking material wrapped around the resistor. It's going to straighten that one lead out a little, and then we're going to put the top plate back on top of the smoke box, and then we'll screw it down like we normally would. Okay, we're going to place the insulator now on top of the smoke box, threading it through the eyelets there. And there it's positioned. One of the advantages, I think, to doing it this way will be there's always that possibility that when you wind the nichrome wire around the wick materials, you have to make sure that it doesn't touch and ground out to the actual smoke box itself. And then you always have to check to make sure that from one lead of the nichrome wire to the smoke box that you don't get any continuity, which would indicate a ground. I've tested this before, and because of the nature of the design of the resistor, it's not possible to have that situation occur. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to place the small screws back in place here to hold the top plate on the smoke unit. be back in a second or so. Okay, just got a couple more screws to put in here. Just one more here on the top. One of the things I should have mentioned also about the Lionel Smoke Resistor is it is 27 ohms, which just puts it right in that sweet spot where it shouldn't burn out real quick, and it also should produce a good amount of smoke for the unit. Also, these are fairly inexpensive. I think I paid $1.25, something like that, when I was at York, and I've seen them on eBay from a couple of different suppliers for like about a dozen for about $12, $14. So it's a good, reasonably priced alternative, and we'll see how well it works. What we're going to do now is just turn the smoke unit over like we normally would, and then pack all of this wicking material inside and put the lower plate in. So just going to turn that around there and pack that all in as neat as possible as we can. I always seem to have a problem getting this nice and neat, so bear with me here. Sometimes using a screwdriver to kind of guide things along there helps out. There, it seems to be in pretty good. And we just have to find the lower cover here, and we'll put that lower cover back on and then fasten in with the 4 small screws. Got a couple of whiskers sticking out there, but we could always use a pair of scissors just to cut those off once we're all assembled here. And there's the first screw, and we'll put the remaining screws in. Okay, we have one more screw to place back in here. I find sometimes that because of the size of these screws is to use a parts grabber as a holder to get everything started up there. It makes it a little bit easier instead of trying to use your fingers. And just give it a start there, and then finish off the assembly. You use obviously with a screwdriver. So we've got this all put back together right now. So the next step would be to reinstall the smoke unit on top of the locomotive itself, which we have right over here. And if you give me a couple of seconds here, I'm going to begin the assembly of that. We'll be back in just a moment. Okay, as you can see, we've got the smoke box mounted back onto the locomotive. And what we'll do now is we'll put the leads back on for the smoke power supply and get those down into the eyelets there. And then we'll solder everything back together. Not going to worry about the light right now. We can solder that back on once we verify that the smoke unit's working properly. Sometimes these wires are a little difficult to get back in because of some remaining solder on the eyelets. A little bit of finagle in there to get it down. There we go. And what we'll do is just solder this up right now, just using a your 35, 50 watt soldering iron. Heat that up, solder those leads right in there. And do the same on the other side. And there we go. And then we'll just cut the excessive lead off of the resistor. Just like that. And now it's time to test it and see how that all works out. So let's just put the locomotive back here on my test track and see how things work. And I guess we should also put some smoke fluid in there. And just give that a couple of seconds there to soak one down into the wick. And we'll just give that a couple of seconds there to soak one down. And here is the finished product. So this provides an alternative way to repair the American Fire smoke unit. Hopefully you've enjoyed watching the video, and hopefully it's of some help to you.